Hello everyone, this is Bloodpet and I welcome you to my Naxxramas preparation guide. I'm making this video mainly for the purposes of my own guild, but I decided I might as well throw it out there for anyone else interested, because even though there might be a lot of other different videos on the subject, the content creators, they can sometimes go on and on about these niche little things and dilute the stuff that actually matters. So if you are in a semi-hardcore guild, you haven't done Naxx yet, or you need a refresher before you step into the classic version of it, this might be the place for you. Now, in the guide I'm gonna be talking about 5 basic things. First, attunement. Second, strategy and encounter knowledge. Third, consumables. Fourth, other useful items to have. And fifth, frost resistance. First, attunement. In order to be able to enter the raid instance, you need to attune yourself. The attunement quest is a very simple one-part quest completed in Light's Hope Chapel. All you need is certain reputation standing with the Argent Dawn faction and bringing in certain materials. You need to be at least honored with Argent Dawn in order to complete this and bring in the materials listed here. In case you are revered, the cost goes down, there is less materials you need to bring in. If you are exalted, the cost is free. Now, how to get your reputation? Obviously, you can do strat and scrollmans, loot the scorch stones, turn them in. You might also be able to farm a good amount of reputation during the Scorch invasion. However, since Naxxramas is releasing shortly after the invasion begins, I would not depend on this. Just get your reputation out of the way as fast as possible. And I would go for whichever version, honored, revered or exalted, whichever you are close to. It's not going to be worth it grinding all the way to exalted just to save up on a couple crystals. Second point, strategy. So a lot of people might say, Naxx in Classic is going to be easy, we're gonna steamroll it. Whatever. But I would argue two things. First, in Naxx, you can't simply ignore the game mechanics. What we've seen in some of the previous raid tiers was people are blasting through so fast with their high DPS that you basically get to skip certain encounter mechanics and you either never see them or they don't impact you the way they should. This is most likely not going to be the case in Naxxramas just because of how the different mechanics are and how much HP the bosses have. Second point, the instance is freaking huge. It's 15 bosses, a lot of trash, there's a lot of things to prepare for, and I would not be surprised if most of the guilds that come into Naxx won't be able to complete it the first time around. Now, how do you prepare in terms of the different encounters? Obviously, go on YouTube, go on Google. I encourage all that, but if it's not paired with actual first-hand experience, by the time you come into Naxx, you're gonna forget most of what you've seen or read about. So I would suggest put your focus on the encounters that are actually really hard. For most guilds, I would say the major roadblocks are going to be 4 Horsemen, Sephiron, and obviously the end boss Kel'Thuzad himself. So if you have to put your focus on studying any encounter strategies, these 3 would be the main ones I would suggest. Also, certain roles or classes might have an important role during different encounters, so I would look that up as well. For example, healers, you might wanna have a look at low tap because of the healing rotation there. For priest, you might wanna look up instructor residues because of the mind controlling you will be tanking there. For mages, you will be kiting on Gluth, look that up, and so on. Third point, consumables. Obviously, you want to bring in whichever class-specific consumables you use. In addition, I would bring a couple flasks. You might not need to pop them right away, but you should have access to them in case progression gets difficult. Even for melees and hunters, where the flask choice is not so obvious, I would suggest a couple flasks of Titans. It will help you on fights like Lothap or Sapphiron. However, funnily enough, on Kel'Thuzad, I as the raid leader would ask you to click your Titans off, just because of how the mechanics of the fight work. As for protection potions, you wanna bring all 5 of the major protection potion types. Especially Frost and Shadow, I would bring 2 stacks of those, 1 or 2 stacks of Nature, 1 stack Fire, and 1 stack Arcane in case you are on the undead side of the Gothic encounter. If you're not, then you don't need Arcane. For melees and tanks, bring a stack of Fabs, it's needed on some trash fights, and everyone have something to cleanse poison with for Spiderwing trash. Number 4. Other useful items. I would argue the most useful is going to be to have your tanks properly geared. Not just your main tank, not just your off tanks, but also your DPS Fury Warriors, because they are going to need to step in and tank as well. In the 4 Horsemen encounter specifically, you're gonna be using up to 8 warriors to tank. You might go down to 6 if you alter the strategy, you might substitute with a Feral Druid, however, ideally you'd have 8 warriors. Now, a lot of people will say, for Horsemen you need 4-piece tier 3, because it gives you a higher chance to hit on your taunts, and the whole encounter is basically you running around and taunting stuff off of each other. If your taunt misses once, you are slowing down the rotation. If your taunt misses several times, you are in risk of failing the encounter because of that. However, you're not gonna wait for several weeks until all your tanks have tier 3, right? You wanna do 4 Horsemen right away. So prepare with the gear that's already available. You wanna gear towards mitigation, not threat, mitigation. Have tier 2, tier 2.5, many of the AQ40 pieces are perfect. No need for defense cap, just have a good mix of stamina, armor and avoidance. Now what you can do about your hit situation as a warrior though, is get this little trinket from ZG. When popped, it's gonna make your taunts hit a lot more. Everyone who's tanking on 4 Horsemen should get this ideally. Speaking about hit, priests should get some hit gear as well, because they are going to be tasked to either mind control or shackle during several occasions. I'm throwing this one out there just because I see it disenchanted a lot of times in BWL, but you can do with any hit items possible. Farm it from raids, craft your bloodvine, whatever works for you. All you need is 3% hit. I believe most of the targets you're gonna be casting on are gonna be level 60, so 3% is the hit cap for you. Paladins, if you do have access to your full tier 1 set, definitely bring that with you for Lothap, because on Lothap there's a debuff that causes you can only heal once per minute. But you can sort of bypass this limitation with the 8-piece that allows you to heal your party at least a little bit. Now, this applies to everyone. You want to stockpile on some mats for your tier 3. So how do you get tier 3? You need to get the token from one of the bosses in Nax, and then you turn it in a quest along with some scraps. These drop from Nax trash. They will be plentiful, no worries about those, but you might want to stockpile on some of the rare materials. Look up which ones you need and farm them already. Fifth and final point of discussion: frost resistance. In Nax, you are going to need frost resistance gear specifically for the Sapphiron encounter. You might be using some pieces on Kel'Thuzad as well, but you're gonna need more of them for Sapphiron. Now, Sapphiron is not like Huron in AQ40, because all your raid is taking frost damage, not just 15 people. The fight is going to be long, and you're taking damage the whole time. How much frost resistance to aim for? This is difficult to answer without knowing the exact circumstances of your guild, but I would say 150 to 200 unbuffed would be a good goal to aim for, because with that you're gonna be mitigating half or over half of the frost damage that's coming to you, at which point it's possible for the healers to keep you up. As for healers themselves, they can go down on frost rest a little bit. They can use between 100 and 150 and should be fine. Your main tank can use none or next to none frost resistance, but that's only one person in the raid. Now, which pieces of the frost resistant gear should you be using? Well, definitely not these. You still want to have actual stats on your gear in order to be able to still put out the DPS and heal. If you gimp yourself into wearing all green gear, you're not gonna be able to get through the fight. Therefore, I would wait until the epic crafted gear becomes available. Once Nax releases and you go in for your first time, if you have the required profession and the required standing with Argent Dawn, you're gonna be able to learn these recipes. Tailoring has a cloak anyone can use, and then each of the professions, tailoring, leatherworking, and blacksmithing, have a chest, gloves, and bracers. So you will probably be using all of these. The only material you cannot farm yet is the Frozen Rune, but rogues should be able to solo farm this, so hopefully the rogues in your guild can get your raid stockpiled with these. You will also get an epic ring as a quest reward for an easy quest at the start of Naxxramas, so that's another 25 frost resist. You can enchant your cloak with 5 all resistances, and these by itself should bring you to around 150 frost resistance. You can add in some off pieces as an exception from the rule that you should have more than just frost resistance on your gear. I still believe it would be fine to use maybe like a Gyrofreeze Ice Reflector or Banshee Finger, because you're not losing too many stats on those slots. And that will do it for the Nax preparation guide. I hope you have learned something, and I wish you good luck in Nax.